All right, so we'll look at a little bit on is Islam a religion of peace, and anyone who wants to take off here in a bit can take off. Anyone wants to stay? We do a little more.
Okay, we're going to keep this quick. I think you already know the answer to the question. You have verses that are in the Quran that seem to contradict each other. For example, chapter 9, verse 29, as we've seen, it says, fight those who believe not in Allah. But then you also have chapter 2, 256, that says there is no compulsion in religion. Chapter 109 of the Quran says, you shall have your religion and I shall have my religion. In other words, you believe what you want to believe, I'll believe what I want to believe, we'll be fine. Chapter 9, verse 5 says, when the sacred months have passed away, then slay the idolaters wherever you find them. In other words, kill them after the sacred months have gone. Again, what can explain this kind of discrepancy? Well, it's the concept of abrogation. Later verses replace earlier verses in Muhammad's mind in the application of Islam. Can we turn David's microphone on? I think that will help. That concept of abrogation comes from within the Quran itself. Chapter 2, verse 106 of the Quran says, whatever communication we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it. Do you not know that Allah has power over all things? In other words, in the Quran itself, Allah says we've caused earlier statements to be abrogated. This isn't the only place. Chapter 15, verse 101 also has a similar statement. People are saying to Muhammad, you're a forger. You're changing things that you said before. You're canceling earlier statements. And then the verse comes to Muhammad. Do they call you a forger? Surely we, Allah, are allowed to replace earlier verses with later verses. That's what the verse says.
There it is. And just so you know, this is really what it comes down to, because the main issue in the media and for Westerners is if Islam is really violent and promotes violence, how come that Muslim down the street is so nice? Why is it? That Muslim doesn't seem violent, doesn't seem like he wants to kill me. And that's true. Most Muslims don't want to kill you, don't want to harm you, don't want to blow up your house or anything like that. It comes down to differences in how you interpret the Quran. The correct classical method of interpreting the Quran is if you find one verse that says one thing and you find another verse that says something else, the only question is which one came last. That's what you're commanded to do now. The other one was abrogated. It was canceled. It doesn't apply to you anymore. So you can open up the Quran and see that the penalty for sexual sin is 100 lashes. You can open up the Quran and see that the penalty for sexual sin is house arrest. Which one applies? Well, the only question is which one came last? The answer is the 100 lashes one. That's why that's the penalty enforced under Sharia. So that's the classic Muslim method of interpretation. The one that goes back to the Quran, the one that goes back to Muhammad, the one that goes back to Muhammad's companions, the one that you find in all of the greatest Muslim commentators. Two verses seem to conflict, go with the last one, cancel the first one. That's not how Muslims do things in the West. In the West, many Muslims have been influenced by Western values, freedom of religion, peace, tolerance. They've been influenced by these things, freedom of speech. And so when they go to the Quran, it's not, let me interpret this in the light of classical Muslim scholarship or the way Muhammad did it. They'll go to the verses that seem to fit in with their worldview, and they'll use those to reinterpret verses that seem to conflict with that. So a Muslim here in the West will look at a verse like there's no compulsion in religion. Even if you go to the commentary, it says it's been abrogated. A Muslim in the West will look at that and say, look at that good Muslim teaching. You see, this is Islam's position on unbelievers. There's no compulsion in religion. And then they'll say, well, Surah 929, which commands me to fight unbelievers, in other words, there is compulsion in religion, that must not mean that. It must mean something else. What could it mean? Well, maybe some people were attacking Muhammad, and that just means defend yourself. So you have these different methods of interpretation, one that actually goes back to Muhammad and one that's kind of a product of being in the West. And what you have is that, yes, Muslims can be totally peaceful because they can interpret the Quran in that way, namely in accord with their Western values. But that's not what we're asking. We're not asking, can a Western Muslim be peaceful? We're asking, is Islam a religion of peace? And Islam is what Muhammad taught. And so the question is, what did Muhammad teach? That's
an excellent differentiation. We're not asking, can a Muslim be peaceful? You can find the most hateful message and somehow derive a method of living peacefully through it. The question is, what does the message originally teach? what are you doing?
Let's zoom through this.
Yeah, we got.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually want to show it?
We want to get to the 3 stages.
Okay, go ahead.
3 stages. Stage 1. Before that, we were going to go to the pattern in Muhammad's life, namely, when Muhammad was in Mecca and was a persecuted prophet and only had 100 followers, he preached peace and tolerance. Later, when he had allies and had an army, then it was convert or die. And the question is that, do we find the same teachings in the Quran? In other words, using the method of abrogation and which one came later and so on. Well, here's what you have. If you've ever wondered wait a minute, that Muslim is quoting the Quran and showing me that it's peaceful, and this other guy's quoting the Quran and it's sounding violent, what's the deal here? Well, in Islam, you have 3 stages. You have 3 stages in Islam. Stage 1, when Muslims are outnumbered, they are to proclaim a message of peace and tolerance. This is when you have verses revealed, like Surah 109, say, O you unbelievers, I do not serve that which you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve, nor am I going to serve that which you serve, nor are you going to serve him whom I serve. You shall have your religion, and I shall have my religion. That, according to the Quran, is what you are to say when you encounter unbelief. If unbelievers are all around you and you say, hey, you've got your religion, I'll have mine. Very peaceful. Love that teaching. That's stage 1, when Muslims are in a minority.
Stage 2 is when Muslim numbers increase. Now it's at this point, Muhammad has an army at his hath, and he is able to defend himself. He's still not going out and attacking, but he's able to defend himself. Chapter 22, verse 39 of the Quran says, permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they are oppressed, and most surely Allah is well able to assist them. Those who have been expelled from their homes without a just cause, except that they say, our Lord is Allah. In other words, people are saying, I believe in Allah. They're being oppressed. They're being expelled from their homes. Now they're allowed to fight. My parents will point to this verse all the time to say this is the reason why Muslims are allowed to fight. And only this reason is why they're allowed to fight.
And it's important, before this, you had stage 1 where they weren't allowed to fight. Even if they're persecuted, you don't fight back. Get to stage 2, now you can engage in defensive jihad. Stage 3, when Muslims are in the majority, they are commanded to engage in offensive jihad. Now you actually go and fight people because of their beliefs, not because they're oppressing you, but because they're unbelievers. So this is Surah 929, you've already heard it before. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth from among the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. So notice what this says. It's not fight those who are oppressing you. Now it's fight those who do not believe in Allah.
And when I bring this verse up with someone like my parents, they'll say, well, you have to know the historical context, that here people had been fighting against Muhammad, and therefore he was saying, fight them back. That's not the case at all.
We know the historical context.
The historical context was they needed money. He said, let's go fight the Romans who are right over the border there. They've been fighting for a long, long time. They just got their money. They're tired. We can go get their money.
That's the historical context behind it.
That's from Ibn Kathir, Book of Battles. That's the context, and it's one that's much more damaging to the case.
So, according to Muhammad's final marching orders, that's Surah 929, if Muslims are in a position of power, you are not to seek peace with the unbelievers. Because you also have in the Quran, if your enemy inclines towards peace, you also incline towards peace. That gets canceled later on. It gets abrogated. Now, be not weary and faint-hearted crying for peace when you should be uppermost. There can be no peace until you are dominant, if you're already in a majority. Ibn Kathir, now this is important. This does not come from the Al-Qaeda handbook. This comes from Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir is considered the greatest commentator on the Quran. So you have different classes. You have the Quran, you have the Hadith, you have the Sirah literature, which are biographies, early biographies, and then you have the Tafsir, the commentaries, which started with Ibn Abbas. Ibn Kathir is considered the greatest commentary of all time, and this was his assessment. And interestingly, this concludes his commentary on Surah 256 of the Quran, which says there's no compulsion in religion. That's when he says it's been abrogated. And he concludes that passage by saying, therefore all people of the world should be called to Islam. If any one of them refuses to do so or refuses to pay the jizya, they should be fought till they are killed. That's the final word on what you do as a Muslim towards unbelievers.
Again, that was a commentary, but it's a commentary on a verse in the Quran, and the Quran seems to say that. The commentary is just saying it out loud.
Notice here you have Bukhari, greatest source on Muhammad's teachings. Allah's messenger said, I have been ordered to fight people until, what? Until they stop oppressing you? I've been ordered to fight people till they say, La ilaha illallah.
Shahada.
And whoever said this, Allah will save his property and life from me. That's the way to be safe, is to convert. That's the way to be safe from Muhammad fighting you. Messenger of Allah said, I've been commanded to fight against people so long as they do not declare that there is no God but Allah. Sahih Muslim. Another passage from Bukhari. A man came to Allah's messenger and said, guide me to such a deed as equals jihad. Muhammad replied, I do not find such a deed. That's important. According to Christianity, according to 1 Corinthians 13, what's the greatest thing in the world? Love. According to Islam, what's the greatest thing in the world? Fighting and dying for Allah in a jihad. And he tells us that exactly. The Prophet said, a single endeavor of fighting in Allah's cause in the afternoon or the forenoon is better than all the world and whatever is in it. Watch. Anas bin Malik, the Prophet said, nobody who dies and finds good from Allah would wish to come back to this world, even if he were given the whole world and whatever is in it, except the martyr, who, on seeing the superiority of martyrdom, would like to come back to this world and get killed again in Allah's cause. Now watch Muhammad. If you wonder why, remember, Muhammad is the greatest example of what you should be like. Here's what Muhammad said. The Prophet said, by him in whose hands my soul is, I would love to be martyred in Allah's cause and then come back to life and then get martyred and then come back to life again and then get martyred and then come back to life again and then get martyred. I just want to fight and kill until I die, and then I want to come back so I can fight and kill some more, and then I want to come back so I can keep fighting and killing. I just want to fight and die and fight and die and fight and die. That's what Islam is about. Not according to me, that's according to Muhammad. Religion of peace. Now we have several other things we can go to. Do you want to go to a video?
I do want to go to this video.
I just wanted to explain to him an exception if you want to hook it up real quick.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Nabil's going to hook up a video. I'm going to show you something. And I'll tell you, so Muslims are supposed to fight unbelievers. And it's clear what Islam teaches. In the West, what position are Muslims in? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3? Stage 1. In, let's say, France, what stage are they? It seems they're going into 2. In Saudi Arabia, stage 3 already, and so that's why people are subjugated. So if you're in a minority, if you're in stage 1, it's very important. You have in the Quran, Surah 328. We didn't talk about taqiyya, so I'll just mention it. In Surah 328 of the Quran, it says, do not be friends with the unbelievers. It commands Muslims not to be friends with unbelievers. And then it goes on to say, unless it's to protect yourselves. Don't be friends. If you're a Muslim, you do not be friends with unbelievers. Unless it's to protect yourself from them. Unless you're in a minority, unless they're a threat to you. Then you pretend to be friendly so that they do not attack you. So, remember, Muhammad preaches a message of peace and tolerance when he's in a minority. Look at Muslims in the West, where are they preaching? Peace and tolerance. Now, what I'm not saying that when a Muslim tells you Islam is a religion of peace, he's lying to you. I think that most Muslims in the West really believe that when they're saying that to you, because lots of them have been westernized by Western culture. So they don't know, they really believe it. They have a different method of interpreting Islam, one that does not go back to Muhammad. But that's the problem. If a Muslim has been westernized, and I ask him what he believes about this, he's going to tell me Islam is a religion of peace. If a Muslim knows what he's talking about and hasn't been westernized, he's going to tell me Islam is a religion of peace. Because he's commanded, he's allowed to deceive me in order to get me to believe that Islam is peaceful. So no matter what, a Muslim is going to tell me Islam is peaceful, and so it's very difficult to know exactly who to believe here.
Now,
Again, from my personal experience, most of the Muslims that I know don't go around practicing taqiyya and deceiving people. But the very few people who do, you're not going to be able to know who they are. That's the scary part. Now, what we're about to show you, we're going to keep it brief. We're going to end with this. This is going to help you understand why we need your help to stay behind. What we're going to show you is David and I have been going to, one of us or both of us has been going to a festival in Michigan for a few years now, where approximately 200,000 Arabs gather. 200,000. And the first year, when David was there, he was able to hand out tracts to share the gospel with them without any sort of problems whatsoever. The second year, we weren't allowed to hand anything out. We weren't even allowed to share the message of the gospel with them unless we had a booth and they came to us. Well, we didn't do that. Instead, what we did was we went to the booth that was promoting Islam. They were handing out pamphlets that said Islam is a religion of peace. And I asked the guys at the booth, hey, can we ask you a question, this camera? Ultimately, they said yes, and I began to interview them. In the process, security came. Now, the security guards at this festival are not policemen. They are local people that have been hired to be security. They effectively shut us down. They grabbed our cameras. They forced us to turn them off. This was after the people at the booth agreed. This after the police said it was fine for us to record. We just didn't clear it by security because we didn't know we had to, and we really didn't have to. They forced us to turn the cameras off. Long story short, within a matter of minutes, Dave and I and our friend Mary Jo Sharp were surrounded by about 18 security guards being pushed and kicked out of the festival. Here in the United States, in Michigan, for doing nothing more than asking a question about a pamphlet. That was last year. This year we went back again. And this year we said, okay, they know us from last year. They know who we are. Instead of going up to anyone, even a booth where they've said it's okay for us to record, we're just going to walk around the festival. And we're going to let people come to us. And if they want to hear the gospel, they will see us and they'll come up to us and say, talk to us, tell us about Jesus, or what are you guys about? Tell us what you're about. So we waited for people to come to us. Here, this is a young man named Richard. He came up to me and said, hey, I'm going to seminary. I want you to pray over me. And we're going to start the video right here.
And just so you know, this is a public festival at a public street. Everyone's invited. It's not a Muslim festival or a Muslim event. It's just a festival in Dearborn celebrating Arab culture. And, well, keep in mind the 3 stages. Because Dearborn, if you don't know, Dearborn has the highest percentage of Muslims in the country.
Oh, right. I forgot to say, Dearborn is 33% Arab. And the largest majority of the Arab population there is Muslim. So you've got a large Muslim population here. Yeah.
Got poor audio here at the beginning.
Yeah, don't bother messing with the volume. This is poor audio right here. So I just prayed over my friend. Can I eat this falafel? Yeah.
What's the problem?
I have no problem.
Yeah, why? I'm trying to make it look bad.
I'm not trying to make you guys look bad. When we made the video last year, we made it explicitly clear that it was the security we had an issue with. Not everyone at the festival, it's security. We put up a video afterwards saying, we want to make this perfectly clear. We don't.
There's no sound coming out of your thing.
Where's the audio coming from?
My mom is Muslim, my dad is Muslim, my sister's Muslim, all my cousins are Muslim. I love Muslim. I got no problem with the Muslim community. It was the security guards here that made the video.
Why'd you decide making all these videos?
That's a good question. We came here yesterday, or last year, and we saw a pamphlet that we had a question about. So we went to the booth who gave us the pamphlet. We said, hey, can we ask you a question about this? And they said yeah. They said yeah, you can ask a question.
I don't understand. I didn't see you at like the Spirit Festival or like the Arab Festival.
I just happened to be here last year. It was like my first time here.
Why are you here again?
Because we wanted to see if it's going better this year. We wanted to see if it's better this year than it was last year.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. I think you're looking for more trouble.
We're not looking for trouble. We want to see things are better. And generally, things have been better. Security hasn't been hitting us. Security hasn't been assaulting us. So things are better. I'm glad about that. And we're talking right now. No one's stopping us from talking. So I'm glad about these things. That's the very reason I'm here. To make sure you and I can talk.
So you're here to preach?
I would like to preach. We haven't even gotten to that point yet.
So preach to me then.
Preach to you? I would love to preach to you.
Why is Christianity better than Islam?
Because Jesus Christ did not claim to be just a prophet. He said he was here to receive worship. He did receive worship. He forgave people's sins. He miraculously healed people. He died on the cross and rose from the dead.
These truths have changed my life, have absolutely changed my life. And I find it so important to let people know about these things that I will tell anyone and everyone who will listen. So I'm glad you asked the question.
Why is there more than one Bible?
So the question is, why is there more than one Bible?
Who? Okay, I got a bunch of you guys who are asking questions. So did like 4 of these guys. I want to.
A human. When was Jesus decided God?
When was Jesus
decided as a God?
That's an excellent question.
325 years after the Roman consul declared him as God.
No, people are worshiping Jesus as God less than a decade after his death.
That's not. How could Jesus be a God if he came like any of us came out? Not a woman. He came like any other man comes out of a woman.
Yeah. So in the Old Testament, we see a prophecy saying that a child will be born to you and he will be the mighty God. So in the Old Testament, it actually says the mighty God will be born as a child to you. In actuality, it can't just be like a half God. It actually says the everlasting Father, Aviad, will be born to you. So this is a prophecy we knew would happen.
Right, but how does God die? You said after his death, he was be God.
That's an excellent question. What we find in the New Testament is that in order for God to take our sins away from us, he can't just wave them away. If God were just to wave away sins, he wouldn't be a just God. So he takes our sins upon himself. He says, all right, I can't just wave these sins away. That wouldn't make me a just God. I'm going to pay those sins for you. That's how much he loves us. And so he comes into the world as a man, and he takes our sins for us. He does it all voluntarily. He doesn't have to do any of this.
Have you met Jesus yourself?
Say again? These are great questions, guys. I'm loving this. Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
Where in the Bible says, can you find the Bible where it says, when Jesus says, I am God, worship me?
Well, in the Bible, when people...
I'll give you $100 in any Bible. There's 80 of them. If you find me...
Okay.
There's 80 Bibles, but there's only one.
Let me...
I know.
Okay. Are you legally allowed to take this mic?
Let go of the mic.
Are you legally allowed to take this?
Yes. Let go of the mic.
Okay.
So we went to jail that night, and some Christians bailed us out the next morning.
Yeah, we were, we did not approach anyone. We waited for people to approach us. We didn't cause any problems. We actually quieted people down when they came up to us. We'd calm them down. We'd start answering questions. An expert, ultimately what they tried to get us for was creating a riot. We were creating a riot there. An expert in crowd control looked at the video and he said, a riot, this is more like a classroom session, which is true. So we spent the night in jail. The city spent thousands and thousands of dollars prosecuting us.
We had they went through. They took us to court, 5-day trial, everything, and we played the video in court.
U.S. taxpayer dollars went to prosecute us, and then we had to fly out there. I had to miss school to defend ourselves. I had to call Michelle in the morning and say, "Hey, I just got out of jail." Unbelievable what we had to do. Because what? Because at this point in Dearborn, you've got an increasing Muslim population percentage, and they are going to start imposing their power, their influence on the city. The city, being a Western, white, pro-minority organization, starts saying, "Yeah, you can't say anything to Muslims. We're gonna prosecute you. How dare you say anything to Muslims at all?" So it's a joint, it's not just the Muslims there, it's also the city being willing to bend over backwards to promote the Muslim agenda. And of course, given how much of the constituency is Muslim, of course they want the votes, of course they want the popularity. So that's what happened, and that's why just by sharing the gospel, David didn't even say a word, by the way, he was just holding a camera. He, our friend Paul, who was holding the camera from which we saw the video, and another friend, Nagin, who was 18 years old, 4'10", hadn't even been a believer for a year, wasn't anywhere near us, was at least 20 to 50 feet away from us the whole time. They arrested her too. She spent the night in jail as well. She got charged twice, actually. The rest of us only got charged once. Here in the United States, that's what's happening. We were ultimately found not guilty, praise the Lord. Yeah, so that's why I'm wearing this, by the way. We've been waiting for an opportunity to record this video. I'm wearing the exact same stuff that I was wearing in that video. Dave's going to change into the same stuff he was wearing.
Can close out and then explain to people who are going to stay.
Yeah, so whoever wants to stay to help us out, that'd be great. We have a few questions and we'll close it out. Sir. It is? Here's what they did. They're sneaky. Last year, when we had our video, they didn't take our cameras away. They just let us leave. We put the videos on YouTube, and they got 2 million views. And everyone said, what's going on in Dearborn? This year, they took our cameras away from us. The mayor posted a letter saying we're hate-filled bigots, that we're trying to cause problems in Dearborn, and we're trying to raise money for ourselves. That's the whole reason we're doing this, and that we're trying to get all Muslims out of America.
And that we were screaming at the crowd. That
Oh yeah, he said we resisted
blocking,
arrest.
yeah.
Did you see us resist arrest there? He said we resisted arrest, that we were screaming into the crowd, causing a riot.
The police said when they approached you, Nabil tried to incite the crowd against the officers.
So the mayor says all this, puts it in a letter, and posts it online. So millions of people see that when we don't have our videos to defend ourselves.
Have you submitted that to any media outlets? That's truly amazing. I've never seen anything like that.
Oh, we've got a bunch like this.
There's
I went
more.
back to the festival on Sunday. I said, all right, I can't go in there. It's not safe. I'm going to stand outside the festival, and we're going to hand out some copies of the Gospel of John in English and Arabic. But as a matter of fact, I know they're going to target me by this point, so I'm not even going to hand anything out. I'm going to stand back and just hold a camera. So my 3 friends, they go and they're handing out copies of the Gospel of John. Within 3 minutes of going to a corner outside of the festival, we're surrounded by 8 police officers.
8 policemen come up around them and tell them
Took
to
us-
stop.
Next time you can do this way, go to the local police station who manages that thing, and then speak to them first.
No,
We,
he's running it. He's running it.
the policemen, we talked to them ahead of time. They were waiting for us to come because they
but-
knew we'd be there.
The chief, by the way, the chief is Chief Haddad. That's the chief of the police department.
I don't know if he's
And
Arabic.
Same mosque, big one, the biggest one. I spoke to the imam there. And I said, how are you? I said, no, I am old, I'm 43 years. I said, don't say that you are old. You're
Yeah.
43 only. Your Muhammad was 51 years old when he was throwing his eyes on 60 years old in the mosque.
Okay, in the back. We got to wrap this up. You know, these are general principles, and again, not all Muslims follow these, not all Muslims know these, but for example, the Grand Mufti of the mosque in Saudi Arabia actually said you need to follow these steps. I don't know if they have exact numbers, it's just a general mentality. I mean, look at what's happening in England. In England, where more and more Muslims are showing up, all of a sudden you've got Sharia banks, you've got Sharia courts. Muslims have been able to get preachers from America arrested because when they were preaching, it was considered hate speech. And at the same time, they're able to convert 9-year-old boys on the side of the street to Islam. So that's because, again, Western mentality of let's not upset the minority, let's bend over backwards for them, which is good in a way, but when it goes too far, it goes too far. Combined with the Islamic mentality of domination, it's not a good mix. We see the same thing in Sweden. We see the same things with the cartoonists. We saw it in Norway. It's coming here. Not to be alarmist, but that is what's happening. Any other questions, sir?
Could you just say a word about the English translations of the Quran as a couple of them that are rather different from each other? One of them, the Al-Qaeda, copious footnotes. How do we are not Muslims or Arabs being totally versus translated?
I just use quranbrowser.org. I just line a few up next to each other, and I see which one makes the best sense. None of them seem to be coming with a theological agenda, unless you know something. I don't.
No, I was just going to, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something where you could sit down and show a Muslim, this is Yusuf Ali. I don't get it because I think it's the most reliable. It's just the most common. It's just the one Muslims in the West appeal to most often. The best, I think, is Hilali Khan.
Hilali Khan's good.
That's just my opinion, but he doesn't seem like he tries to sugarcoat anything, whereas in Yusuf Ali, for instance, where it says, and beat them, he puts, beat them lightly. which is
Isn't
not
the text,
which
yeah.
isn't what it says. But with that said, this is still a really good translation.
For example, when you were discussing the astronomical issue, well, looking at the footnotes there, and it says, this is a set of Earths, this is the planets, this is referring to the planets. Now, how do we determine if that is that really what it is referring to, or what's it talking about?
And that's what we said when you go to what Muhammad said about that. If he knows what he's talking about, he's supposed to know that Muhammad is the greatest interpreter of the Quran. And Muhammad said, what's under you? Well, there's this flat earth. What's under that? Another flat earth. And what's under that? Another flat earth. That doesn't sound like our solar system at all. And besides that, you have the 7 heavens on top of that. What are those? Point is, it just doesn't fit.
We'll take the last.
The other one is it refers to 7 layers of the Earth's crust. There are all kinds of ways to try and make that.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Make that fit.
So we'll take the last 3. We got to keep them really quick, though, sir.
Yeah, I just wonder if you guys are considering suing the entity wishing it arrested you?
It's in the process of happening. Our lawyers who
a Christian law firm said that's not right. And
well, here's what happened. We'll tell you what happened. Last year when they assaulted us, it was really me. I pushed and I said, let's not sue them because we don't want to be known as the guys who go around suing Muslims.
I don't want to sue them either.
Yeah, but you were kind of like, you make the decision. I was like, all right.
I'm like, I don't care, whatever you.
Yeah, he said he didn't care. I was like, well, I don't want to be known as those guys. This year, but a whole bunch of people were telling us, you have to, and they'll do it again. Whatever, we'll deal with that when it gets there. So this year we got there.
We could have even pressed charges. We went to the police station and stuff. They said you can press charges on these 3 people, and we decided we're not going to press charges. Just can you make sure that those people aren't at the air festival?
That they're not security guards ever again. But they came back this year.
Yeah,
at least one of them did.
They didn't stop them.
So this year we said, okay, we're gonna take everyone's advice and do it. And also our lawyers who did everything pro bono. We didn't have to pay a cent. They even flew us out there. They said the reason why we're doing this is so that we can show the world the persecution that's happening against Christians for sharing the gospel. In order for that to happen, we're gonna have to sue. So we'll pay to defend you as long as you let us sue them afterwards. And so that's what's going on. Thomas More Law Center, great people. We'll get you in a moment. We had one over here, and then we'll come back to you.
I just had a question on the English translation. This is Dawood, MJ Dawood.
That's a great translation.
Okay.
And last question. Thank you so much. All right, thank you everyone so much for coming. If you can stay, please do. We're going to need your help.